If there's one group of people with overinflated egos of their fighting abilities, it's definitely Navy SEALs.
Best advice for you, Sean, is to stay in the octagon, keep fighting for that next purse. And us SEALs, we'll keep fighting for your freedom, brother.
Sure, they're trained in military operations, able to use all kinds of weapons, and are in incredible athletic condition. But in a straight-up fist fight, they're nowhere near the level of UFC fighters.
You take a skilled UFC fighter, and it doesn't matter that you were a quote-unquote, you know, Navy SEAL or special operations guy. That's just not going to happen.
But whether it's their alpha mindset, combat-hardened skills, or a bit of toxic masculinity, SEALs seem to get into altercations with UFC fighters all too often. And surprise, surprise, they get a rude awakening every single time. So these are the times that Navy SEALs tried to fight UFC fighters. If there was one UFC fighter to not try and out-alpha, Sean Strickland may be top of that list. It doesn't matter if you're an untrained streamer, an internet personality, or in this case, a Navy SEAL, Strickland will not go lightly if you step in a cage with him.
Sean Strickland's a different animal. Sean Strickland has, you know, he's got this fucking man code, and he believes in it. Like, you gotta get your ass kicked every now and then. He spars all the time, spars constantly, and if you agree to get in there with him, you're essentially agreeing to let him beat the fuck out of you, because you don't really have a chance.
The situation started when Strickland put out a message saying that no Navy SEAL in the world could survive a week training with him.
I don't think there's one Navy SEAL who could survive a week training with me. I'm kind of sick of seeing it, because like, you guys think you're badass, come train with me for a week. I'll show you what's up. I'll break you.
Considering a major part of any SEAL's career is gritting their way through the initial training course, being told they couldn't just do a single week of MMA training wasn't going to go down well, and it's safe to say it annoyed a bunch of Navy SEAls.
John, you talk about taking people's souls from their body. Well, me and my boys, we've actually taken a lot of real souls from people. You know what I'm saying, bro?
The weakest SEAL that has ever been created would destroy you in a street fight, as I would. There are no rules. We are fighting for our life. Every single time you went for an armbar or a choke or something like that, I would chew your face off. Those ugly ears sitting on the side of your head, I would rip off.
This was during an era where people like David Goggins, a former SEAL, was training UFC fighters like Tony Ferguson and even becoming his cornerman. But while many of the SEALs were just talk, one took Strickland up on his offer and rocked up to their gym. And it turns out this Navy SEAL was actually an MMA fighter as well, with an 11-1 amateur record and a 2-1 pro record.
So this is my boy Mitch. I've known him for a minute. Solid dude. How many fights have you had?
Like 17, 18, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had a lot of fights. So I don't know if it's fair to say you're a Navy SEAL, but is it fair to say, I mean, you're also a professional fighter?
Yeah.
And there's not many Navy SEAls who are professional fighters, so.
But even with this kind of experience, he knew there was a huge gulf in class between the two when it came to fighting.
I've always respected Sean, you know, from training with him in the past, his mentality towards fighting, and I thought it would be awesome to come out here and jump on the opportunity to get some rounds in with him. He's the people's champ. It's awesome. Sean, we don't have any wagers.
And unlike our next story, thankfully Mitch came in very respectful of Strickland, who in turn somewhat looked after the Navy SEAL.
I don't want to knock you out, I want to make you quit.
Strickland just ended up playing with a Navy SEAL, digging body shots rather than trying to knock him out. He wanted to make Mitch quit to prove a message.
You know you're gonna quit, Mitch. Come on!
But no one's ever questioned the toughness of Navy SEALs, so unsurprisingly, Mitch survived the full 25 minutes just about. Although don't get it twisted, Sean Strickland could have finished him at any point he wanted.
Navy SEAL training, what, a year, 2 years? If I were to take an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, and I said, hey, I'm gonna train you for 1 year, 2 years, just 1 year, 2 years, and then you're gonna go fight in the UFC at the top level, even at the lowest level, you would get utterly destroyed.
But unlike Strickland taking it easy on the Navy SEAL, in this next story, the UFC fighter didn't hold back one bit. Where Sean Strickland is the loud, cocky, and in-your-face type of guy, one UFC fighter who is the complete opposite is Carlos Condit. The former UFC interim champion is much more reserved, never the center of attention, and doesn't talk a big game. But make no mistake, he's called the natural-born killer for a reason. And back in 2008, the UFC invited Condit and a handful of other UFC fighters to a US military base in Afghanistan. The goal was for them to boost morale, have some fun, and teach the troops a trick or two in hand-to-hand combat.
When I get back, I have about 5 weeks to train, so I'm gonna try to stay in shape here. I heard there's hills to run up here in Afghanistan, so we doing some sprints and maybe doing a little bit of rolling with these guys if I can.
So which one of y'all look like soldiers gonna take them down tonight?
I'll take them on. I don't know if I'll take them down, but I'll take them on.
But after some rolling and drilling, they decided to have a little spar in front of everyone, and one Navy SEAL made the mistake of asking Carlos Condit.
And then this guy says to Carlos Condit, another one of the Special Forces guys, he says to Carlos Condit, do you want to spar? And Carlos goes, yeah, sure. All right, no problem. And by the way, they call him the natural born killer. That guy is cool as fuck. Never raises his voice. He's just super mellow. He's like, yeah, sure. I'll spar, no problem.
At the time, Condit was the WEC welterweight champion, had a 22-4 record, with every win coming by finish and 19 of them in the first round. He might have looked less intimidating than Michael Bisping or BJ Penn, and maybe that's what this guy thought. Because we all know Army guys consider themselves as the toughest out there.
I don't walk in the room and do like an eye test of being like, right, I can take all of you. Like, my mind just doesn't work that way. My mind just doesn't work that way. Like, it just doesn't.
It's so funny. I know a lot of like Army, like military guys who do think like that.
Yeah. The Navy SEAL then asked Carlos how hard they were going to spar, and the pro fighter had a calm response. It put the ball in the Navy SEAL's court immediately. He could go light and just play around, or if he wanted a bit of a scrap, Condit was more than willing. And usually with a so-called friendly spar like this, they'd both start out slow and maybe pick up the intensity, but the Navy SEAL went from 0 to 100. Whether it was adrenaline, trying to look tough in front of his comrades, or thinking he could score a cheap shot knockout on a pro MMA fighter, he cracked Condit with the very first punch. You could hear the Army guys in the room reacting, knowing that this wasn't going to be a playful spar. Condit took a second, shook off any cobwebs, and stayed true to his word that he'll hit the Navy SEAL as hard as he gets hit. Just shows that in a true fight, a UFC fighter will blitz through a Navy SEAL with no resistance at all. And while Condit was his cool, calm, and collected self after knocking out a SEAL, Bisping thought things could get ugly.
Knocks the f***ing Special Forces dude unconscious. And everyone's looking around in the room, everyone's like, holy shit. And I'm like, oh, Carlos, I'm not sure that was the smartest thing to do for f***ing sake. I don't want to die up here, but fair play to Carlos Condit. And my point of the story is, ever since I saw that, I was like, he's a bad motherfucker, man. He's a great guy.
Thankfully, the rest of the US troops knew the Navy SEAL was the one who turned it into an actual fight and didn't hold any animosity. In the end, Condit thanked everyone for their time, gave his respect for their service, and the UFC fighters got out unscathed. But this next story was anything but respectful, and it ended up with not one, not two, but 3 Navy SEALs unconscious after a bar fight with a former UFC heavyweight champion. If there was a bar fighting ultimate championship, I think Bas Rutten would have been the greatest of all time.
And he was just blasting people with kicks, fucking people's legs up.
Yeah.
He was fucking people up, man.
He used to make street fighting DVDs, has a street fighting section in his Wikipedia page, and was one of the best strikers in the early days of MMA. Something 3 unfortunate Navy SEALs found out the hard way in a bar in Tokyo back in the 90s when Bas Rutten was the man. It started when the 3 guys were using their size to intimidate the local Japanese people.
Claiming that they were Navy SEAls. They had Navy SEAls tattooed on their bodies, but they were Navy SEAls. 100% guaranteed they're not, because I train the SEAls and they're not guys like that, trust me. So, and they came in, and what happened was I was standing and I see these, there's a long, it's called Motown, is the bar it's called in Roppongi in Tokyo. And there's a long bar. and I see so many people flying left and right. I go, what's going on? And I'm looking, and these 3 guys came and they pushed all these little Japanese people to the side.
Then they made a critical error, putting their hands on Bas and pushing him out of the way like he was no one. It's the ultimate disrespect.
And sure enough, I'm standing in the middle, I'm just looking away. I didn't want to look at them, and sure enough, they pushed me as well. I say, hey guys, come on, man. What are you guys doing? And right away, they surrounded me. And you want to go, man? You want to go? You want to go? Bring it outside?
Not that Rutten would have needed any backup, but he wasn't alone either. With him was UFC tournament winner and former Pancrase champion Guy Mezger, former UFC, WEC, and Strikeforce champion Frank Shamrock, and a bunch of other fighters. And Mezger at least had the decency to warn the Navy SEALs of the huge mistake they were making.
He says, we're all professional fighters. Oh, I don't give a crap. I don't give a crap. He says, yeah, I know, I understand that, but from all of us, that's the worst guy to pick a fight with. You shouldn't do this right now. And the guy goes, oh, so you want to go outside? I said, cool. Who do you want to fight? I said, I'll fight all 3 of you.
Back in the 90s, MMA in the UFC was not popular whatsoever. Nowadays, if a bunch of huge 6-foot-plus guys with cauliflower ears told you they were pro fighters, you'd believe them. But 30 years ago, this was a different story. The Navy SEALs would have 100% believed they were the toughest guys around and no one could lay a finger on them. So when Bas Rutten happily agreed to fight all 3 of them solo, they must have thought it would be the easiest fight of their lives. But they had absolutely zero idea they were about to throw hands with one of the most dangerous men on the planet at that time. And despite having the numbers on their side, they were instantly outmatched.
We're walking outside, 2 of them got dropped instantly. I go bong bong.
Now one-on-one, Bas Rutten decided to have some fun.
I told the guys, I say, you know what? I'm not going to knock him out. I'm going to submit him. You know, I didn't know I would do favors. So I remember I got him in an armbar first. He taps, he says he wants to quit. I let him go, and right away he attacks me again.
Oh no.
I roll right away into a knee bar. I say, is it over now? And I'm really hyperextending his leg a little bit because I want to make sure that he would stop. And he said, no, there's nothing, please stop. I said, okay, so I let him go, and again he attacks me.
After treating the Navy SEAL like a white belt training partner, he decided enough was enough and choked him unconscious. But he had one final trick up his sleeve, a way to humiliate the guy and mess with his ego.
And then everybody goes, Bas, just choke him out. I go, okay. And so I choke him out, we laid him on the ground. I believe we pulled his pants down and we were just waiting for him to wake up. That's what I believe we did at the time. And of course he got very embarrassed when he woke up.
I hope from that day onwards, those 3 guys never tried to bully random people ever again. And speaking of US Army guys getting submitted, here's Paddy Pimblett running the gauntlet and rolling with 10 Marines back to back. It started when Paddy went out to San Diego to a Marine Corps base camp to train with a bunch of the US Army. Before the martial arts challenge began, Paddy was put through his paces with a serious fitness test.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Paddy had no idea that we'd be putting him through this gnarly of a workout.
What were you expecting today?
I can always grapple, lad. It's just like this year at the weight test. He went for a run and squat twice this week. It's gonna be good.
And we know that out of camp, Paddy isn't always the consummate professional and sometimes gets a little out of shape. So it's safe to say Pimblett was pretty tired by the end of the fitness drills. But then it was his turn and the focus was on jiu-jitsu training. Initially, Paddy was just teaching the Army guys a thing or two.
I'll control his wrist and grabs the back of his elbow. This other leg goes into his armpit. Bring my left leg in front of his face, lift up, and that goes on. So everyone partner up, try and get someone a similar size. Don't really want to be grappling with someone who's like 20 kilo heavier than you. If your arms are bent, he can pull your head down, but as soon as you straighten your arms, you can't do it. You're pushing yourself away from him, get tight to him again. Push his wrist tight to his back, towards the back of his head.
And after a little bit of training, some of the guys had a challenge for Paddy.
We don't have to do loads of rounds, like, but we've got to do 5-minute ones, lad. You know what I mean?
So every time Paddy taps someone out, someone new's gonna get in.
Oh, was that what you just want to do that? I don't mind doing that, me, like.
Do it.
So, just like that, with no warning, Pimblett agreed to a gauntlet-style challenge against many Marines. Bear in mind, this is after a week of heavy training and a day of grueling fitness drills. But whether it was against bigger, stronger dudes or letting them start on top, Paddy submitted 10 guys back to back.
Stalemate. Reset. Heavy rotation.
and after the challenge was complete, Paddy sat down to talk about mental health and answer questions the Marines had. But in this next story, the UFC fighter didn't give the Navy SEAL mental advice, he probably gave him permanent mental damage. In terms of UFC fighters who just straight up look intimidating, Chuck Liddell is right up there. A vicious knockout artist, a brawler, and someone you definitely don't want to mess with. But many years ago in Hawaii, a bunch of Navy SEALs didn't get that memo. It started when there was an altercation at a bar, and actually the Army guys caught Chuck and some other UFC fighters off guard.
Fighting with like a bunch of Navy SEAls.
Yeah, that happened a long time ago. People ask that all the time. I mean, for me, I wasn't involved in most of it. The first time they came in, all the guys that trained with me that are normally working at that bar were in Hawaii with us. Like, cause we all went to Hawaii for our whole fight team went. And Gam McGee was still there, who's 6'10", almost 300 pounds, and he fought for the UFC world title at one point.
They even managed to cut the 6'10" heavyweight Gan McGee.
And he got cut. I got cut over his eye. He got a cut somewhere on his face, I think. And then a couple of his buddies really pissed off, and everyone was mad about it.
The Navy SEALs should have considered themselves lucky that they got away unscathed and avoided the bar at all costs. But just a couple of weeks later, they foolishly showed their faces, and this time the UFC fighters were prepared.
They showed up again 2 weeks later, and so the guys got back at them. When I showed up, they had one of my buddies had a guy pinned. The only thing I did was I ran over. Hey, this guy was hitting my buddy when he had the guy started hitting my buddy that had him pinned. I ran over and just head snapped the guy, bounced his face off the ground. So
what does head snap?
Yeah, what is that?
Just grab his head, and just move back and pull his head down and slapped his head off his head went off the ground. He went out.
Getting punched or elbowed would be bad enough, but Chuck Liddell grabbed a guy's head and drove it face fast into the concrete. The SEAL was no doubt pouring blood, had his nose broken, a concussion, and much, much more.
You strike me as more of a put him in a like choke him out and then lay him down nice and soft.
Just like that was the next guy.
Typically that would I don't once it goes to throwing punches, I don't do that. I did that one time in college and got kicked in the face while I was doing it. Never again. So once a bunch of people are throwing punches, I try to keep my hands free.
While that happened, it sounded like the rest of the pro fighters got their revenge on the Navy SEAls.
I'm gonna say Gan McGee, Tim Kennedy, Chuck Liddell, that crew, right? Mm-hmm. Those guys before the UFC was big. Those guys all worked as bouncers in San Luis Obispo. So some SEALs were doing some training up in the area. They went out in town, got into a fight, and the SEALs got their ass kicked.
These stories just go to show that no matter what, Navy SEALs are outmatched when it comes to hand-to-hand combat with pro fighters. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed these fighters' stories. We have a bunch more videos just like this lined up, so hit subscribe as hard as Carlos Condit head kicked that Navy SEAL so you don't miss them.